This is a very controversial issue. We're not going to be able to solve it on this show. I wish we could, but I do want to bring to light the perspective of two people from the middle of this conflict, and later in the week, probably tomorrow, I was hoping, or early next week, I will have some representatives talking from the Palestinian perspective. So let's start with you, Yarden. What is it like living in Israel right now in the midst of this crisis?
Well, first of all, thank you for the lovely introduction, and it's been a pleasure to work with you as well. And thank you for the opportunity to shed some light on the situation from an Israeli's point of view. I would say that the past few weeks have been excruciating, in the lack of a better word. It's been troubling on various accounts, but first of all, as a young mother, I feel riddled with anxiety all the time. I come from Beersheba, which is a city in the south of Israel, so I'm pretty familiar with rockets and sirens, and I'm well versed in the ways of the routine of running to your shelter in the middle of the night. It's something that I've practiced a lot in the past, unfortunately, but it just feels different now as a mother. And I constantly worry for my son, and I wonder about what prospects there are for him in a country like ours. I was raised being told that maybe by the time I grow up, I won't have to go to the army. I won't have to defend my country. And I want to be frank enough with my son to never tell him lies. So I'll spare him with these promises, because it looks like this vicious circle is never ending, unfortunately. So as a mother, this is difficult on a whole other level. But it has also been extremely painful as a Jew. I think that because of social media and just misinformation spreading around in the speed of light, faster than ever before, it's very troubling to see that not only is Israel not a safe place, for Jews, being the only Jewish country in the world, but it seems to me that there is so much hate speech, so much anti-Semitism, so much anti-Jewish sentiment just spreading and circulating around the web and around the world, that I also fear for my Jewish brothers and sisters across the world. So if I don't feel safe in Israel, the only Jewish home, and I worry for the Jewish people across the planet, it can get a bit discouraging at times, and somewhat depressing. But
so
I will say this.
Go ahead. Yarden, go ahead. I wanted to get to Ron, but I wanted you to finish.
What I did want to say is that the middle. Yes, of course. So I did say that I feel immense proud in both having a country that I get to call home. It is a privilege my forefathers didn't, and having a nation for a people that was displaced and spread around the globe for centuries, and then having the privilege to return to our historic homeland and build a home for me and my child here isn't something I take for granted. So, these prices we pay, which are immense prices, are still a sacrifice worth making for the privilege to have a home. And secondly, I'm very thankful for the support of people across the world who have reached out to us and who have tried helping either, Jewish people or just supporters of Israel. And it makes us feel less alone at such a troubling time.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. How old is your son right now?
He's 1 year and 10 months old.
Gosh, because I haven't seen you since, before he was born. Ron
Right.
Belkin, what is your perspective as an Israeli with what's going on right now? And I have to mention that Wonder Woman Gal Gadot has been under a huge amount of criticism for what seemed like a lovely tweet that she made, and maybe you can address that as well.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for having both of us on your show. No, I didn't see Gal Gadot's tweet.
I'll read it in a minute.
Yeah, okay, read it to us in a minute and we can react to that. I'm a little older than Yarden. My son is not the cuddly, soft, sweet baby that she's holding in her hands. My son is wandering around somewhere in the darkness as a soldier, defending our country. And I've had some very sleepless nights lately. I don't exactly know where he is, but I think I know what he's about, what he's doing. And this is a little nerve-wracking, I must tell you. By the way, if you heard something in the background, I think there were some explosions just in the background. I think I heard them. Let me share with you, Richard, how day-to-day life is in Israel the last few days. Today, I was in Tel Aviv with Osnat, my wife, and my daughter, and suddenly the air raid sirens went off. And air raid sirens is something that is your blood chills. I mean, it's a kind of sound. It's an eerie kind of sound. I don't know if you heard it ever, but it does put you in a very fearful situation, and it kind of envelops you in a kind of eerie kind of noise. We immediately scrambled and to find some shelter. We heard some explosions. And then we raised our heads, and just above us, some rockets that were fired from the Gaza Strip to Tel Aviv were just about to hit more or less the area that we're at. And at the very last moment, they were intercepted by these very advanced anti-missile missiles that we have here. So if you ask, maybe you can ask somebody in Los Angeles, what did you do today? I went to cafeteria, I went to Starbucks, I had a coffee, I went to the beach, I played some tennis, Richard, or some ping pong with my mother. We had such an experience. So it's strange. It's strange. And unfortunately, as Yarden said, this is not the first time. Hopefully it's the last time, but I'm not sure about that. But this is the reality that we are brought up into. And I think that once and for all, and I think maybe Yarden's generation will make a difference, but we need to put an end to this once and for all. I mean, we need to find our small space in this region, the homeland of the Jewish people. We need to have a roof above our heads, over our heads, and feel safe. And unfortunately, it's not that easy.
So that is pretty much exactly what Gal Gadot, the actress, tweeted today. It's been retweeted 23,000 times, 109,000 quote tweets, 131,000 likes, but also a lot of criticism. What she said is, my heart breaks. My country is at war. I worry for my family, my friends. I worry for my people. This is a vicious cycle that has been going on for far too long. Israel deserves to live as a free and safe nation. Our neighbors deserve the same. And she got criticized because she didn't call the Palestinians by their name. She said neighbors. I think that's just a lovely way to refer to your neighbors, is to call them neighbors. But then again, maybe I'm biased because I am a Jew and a huge supporter of Israel. I pray for the victims and their families. I pray for this unimaginable hostility to end. I pray for our leaders to find the solution so we could live side by side in peace. I pray for better days. I find nothing objectionable about that. Do you guys?
I personally find nothing to object to. I think that it is just the climate on social media is just intolerable, honestly. It is so easy to spread lies and half truths and just, in the name of looking woke or progressive, but you dare sing a different tune or speak a different a different idea, bring about a different voice, and you are scrutinized and under attack and silenced. And I think that her trying to preserve her status as, she's a household brand, and she is trying to do right, on the social media front, and also do right by, her biggest fans here in Israel, her home state. And I think she's in a very difficult situation, honestly. And I think that she's just trying to do her best in a very difficult situation. And I don't see people calling out Bella Hadid or Gigi Hadid for for their wording, though it is extremely problematic at least, and anti-Semitic at worst. So I honestly, I just don't think that we should turn to stars, influencers, actors, and models for our piece of history. I think we should reach out to experts. I think we should check our sources. I think we should get our information from objective, qualified, intelligent people, and not, not models.
Okay. Ron, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to what Yarden said. I think that what was tweeted is very decent, and I don't see any controversy about that. What needs to be said is, though, this rocket shooting, and Richard, you didn't mention, but there is a lot of provocation coming out from the Gaza Strip, inciting riots and violence in the Arab community in Israel. As you know, Richard, just a mile from my home, there is a big Arab village called Kfar Qasim, which has been subject to riots for the last 72 hours or so. Violent, I can hear that from my window. You hear the explosions, you hear the fireworks that these gangs are shooting at the police, etc. So this is also from shooting rockets from the Gaza Strip onto I think 2/3 of Israel has already been targeted. And I just heard on the news that something has happened in the north. So basically, all
Ron,
of Israel is threatened.
Are you scared? I know you're scared for your son who's in the army, and you said that you have no idea where he is, but you can imagine, right? I mean, it's not going to be perhaps the kind of safe place a parent would like to think of, his son being in. And I know your kids, and they're wonderful kids. Are you personally scared about the next 24 hours for your safety and your family's safety?
I'm scared about myself. I can manage. I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about this country, which has gone through so much, and generations after generations have gone through extreme hardships. And it seems that we thought my generation thought that Yarden's generation will be the first one who will enjoy a peaceful life. Her son will grow up in a more peaceful environment. We just had the Abraham Accords just a year ago, dramatic peace initiatives, which, by the way, have survived, I think, very nicely through the last couple of weeks. And I don't think there's any effect on that. But again and again, we're subjected to rounds of violence. Richard, let me just tell you, to put it very, very straight, put it on the table. Gaza Strip was returned to the Palestinians, I think something like 20 years ago, a little less than 20 years ago. They received the territory for their own rule. They could do whatever they want. They received a lot of foreign aid from the United States, from Europe. I don't think that we did anything to interfere with their lives. And still, after these many, many years, this is very far from anything remotely close to a democratic rule over there. The funds that they receive from the EU and from the United States and other countries are being turned into rockets. They have thousands and thousands of rockets. We see them in the sky every day. And what else can we do? I mean, we gave them whatever they wanted. And unfortunately, and Richard, this is something that needs to be said very clearly from this part of the world to yours. Greater forces are in play here. It's the Iranians who are trying to gain a lot of influence in our part of the Middle East, as well as in other countries around us. Allies of the United States, or former allies of the United States, are being threatened by the Iranians. Unfortunately, the current administration in the United States is seen, at least understood, to try to appease the Iranians into some kind of peace accord and lifting of sanctions, etc. And I think that they're gaining a lot of momentum, a lot of self-confidence, and when they see that in our part of the world, when you see that your opponent is just a little bit weaker, then you take advantage of that. So I'm not saying anything about, I don't want to interfere with US politics, but when you let go of the stick for just a few minutes in our part of the world, you get beaten back.
I want to respond to a couple of things. First of all, it is, how much do these rockets cost? You've both been in the military. Do you have any idea how much one of those rockets that's being sent from Gaza into Israeli population centers costs? Let's say it's what, $30,000, $50,000?
Probably less. Probably less.
Like what, $10,000?
Let's assume.
Okay, so let's say $10,000.
I wouldn't know the cost. I wouldn't know the cost, but I would say that it's definitely too much, considering the fact that kids there don't have schools, the elderly don't have hospitals.
That's my point. I mean, even if it's 10,000 and there's 1,000 rockets, that's a lot of money that could go to take care of the legitimate humanitarian needs of the people in Gaza. I mean, food and jobs and infrastructure and all of that, right? So there's something horrifically wrong with what the world is doing. And I'd love to hear, I want to talk a little bit about politics, and we're going to get heavily criticized by a lot of people who will ultimately watch this, that it's too one-sided, right? Because the argument is that Benjamin Netanyahu, who has gone through 4 elections and he's desperate to stay as prime minister because he's on trial for corruption, and he doesn't want to go to jail. He's Donald Trump Jr. with an Israeli who speaks Hebrew, although he doesn't have an Israeli accent. He speaks English incredibly well, but he was about to lose his power because of a coalition that was forming and ready to take power that would oust him. And what a perfect thing. I mean, is this like a false flag kind of situation where he pokes the bear, then creating the kind of response that for sure would come by kicking people out of their homes in East Jerusalem? I mean, is this a purposeful political ploy by Benjamin Netanyahu to stay in power? Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Yarden? Ladies first. Okay. I think we'll never. Richard will never know. I think we'll never know. I think it's a little far-fetched to say that Benjamin Netanyahu is a master in politics. I mean, if he'll ever write a book about his times and events and what happened in the back rooms, it'll be a world bestseller. And
I mean, so we agree that Netanyahu, I mean, he's been the longest serving prime minister in Israel, that he is a master manipulator of the political system in Israel, right? We all agree with that, right?
Yes, we agree to that. However,
we agree.
Again,
yes.
I
would just like to say, if possible.
One second, Ron. Let me have Yarden pipe in, and then you can respond as well.
Sure, Yarden.
I'll say this: you know me. You know where my allegiance lies politically.
I do.
You know that I'm not a supporter of Bibi. However, we need to separate. We need to separate two things. So does the rising tensions serve his political grasp over the country? Definitely. He is a master of divide and conquer. That is what he has done. It is what he has done within Israeli society as well. That is why for so long no one has been able to form a proper opposition, because even the opposition is so divided internally. There is no way for someone to overcome all these barriers in order to form a large enough opposition. However, that should be put aside as we look into the regional circumstances which are at play here. So if Netanyahu would have liked to stir something out of the blue, he wouldn't be able to do it without all these rifts, all these tensions already rising in, across our borders. So there is the delay in elections of the Palestinians. There is the aggression rising in the Gaza Strip. There is the constant spread of weapons into the region by the Iranians. Okay, they are equipping all of our enemies across all of our borders with very, very sophisticated weapons, aiming to create Israel, an entrenched Israel, when all of its neighbors in Syria, in Lebanon, in the Gaza Strip have these now advanced weapons that have been brought in from the Iranians, okay? And they are now using the tensions in Sheikh Jarrah. They're using these tensions to justify an onslaught over Israel. So those two things are entirely separate.
Ron,
I would say
go ahead, Yarden, because I want to move forward a little bit on this conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Finish what you were saying.
Yeah, I would just say that war always serves extremists on both sides. But I will say that it is not at all the result of the political desires of Benjamin Netanyahu, but of the greater scheme of things and the clash of powers in the Middle East between the radical regime led by the Iranians and the camp of moderates, which was slowly starting to build itself across the region, and which the Iranians have every desire on earth to demolish.
Okay. So Ron, I want you to respond, but I really want to focus on the following. This crisis that you are now suffering through, and Ron, your son is potentially putting his life at risk to help resolve, was created, from what I understand, by actions that were taken to take Palestinians living in East Jerusalem out of their homes. Is that not accurate? And if that is accurate, what is the justification? What do you say to people who sympathize with the Palestinians and their cause, or just humanitarians who think that is not the right thing to be doing?
Yeah, first, I have nothing to add to what Yarden said about the greater, the larger picture. There will always be, if you're looking for a trigger, you will always find a trigger. You're looking for a hook, you'll always find the hook. There is a relatively insignificant matter in Jerusalem involving a few houses, involving some families. It's been taken to the Supreme Court. Israel has a very, very well-known, renowned, and distinguished judiciary, and it will be solved there. And if it's not a few houses in Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem, it will be something else. That's not the issue. I mean, there was no bloodshed. There was nothing, no big event there. Just I would say, an excuse for something to happen. The other reason was that there were riots on the Temple Mount. Young Palestinians were throwing rocks and other objects onto the Wailing Wall area. The police came in. They tried to stop it, etc. Again, nothing too dramatic. But if you're looking for a trigger to shoot your own bullet, then this has been found. There will always be, when you have two communities in friction, there will always be areas of friction, and you will always find the excuse if you're looking for it.
Okay.
By the way, Richard, just want to add that last 24 hours, there have been many initiatives. I know that my mayor in my town has signed a petition together with the mayor of Kfar Qasem and some other Arab villages not too far, or townships not too far away from where I live, calling for restraint, calling for peace, calling for police instructions to be followed very strictly. This has happened all over the country. There are a lot of such initiatives, and we should not let those fanatic minorities, small groups of thugs from extreme groups fire up this country. I think that overall we can find a way to live in peace with our neighbors internally. I am sure that we can find a way to live in peace with our neighbors externally. However, it's very difficult when you're talking about extreme religious trends and I would say, yeah, very. I wanted to choose my words wisely here, but extreme religious fanaticism. It's difficult to have a dialogue with people like that. So it's challenging.
Well, listen, we're dealing with that in our country here. Donald Trump has changed politics in this country. We literally had a member of the House of Representatives today say that the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, I'm sure you guys heard about that, was just a bunch of tourists trying to have a tourist visit of the United States Capitol. I mean, it's just, it's incredible how polarized we are. Social media, I think, has a lot to do with that. The rise of authoritarian leaders, like Putin, obviously, and I would call Netanyahu authoritarian, and Donald Trump and others is adding to that. Bolsonaro in Brazil, et cetera, Duterte in the Philippines. I mean, it's a scary time. I just want to close this out. It is my belief that in the year 2000, when Bill Clinton summoned Ehud Barak and Yasser Arafat, who was the head of the PLO at that time, to Camp David to work things out, that Ehud Barak and Bill Clinton presented the Palestinians with not a perfect opportunity, for sure, but a pretty damn good opportunity to have a sovereign, independent country, a Palestinian sovereign state in, I believe it was the end of the year 2000. And my understanding of that, and I have actually spoken to Bill Clinton directly about this, is that Yasser Arafat was not interested, nor have any Palestinian leaders since him have been interested in actually having a Palestinian independent country, Palestinian state, with the allowance of there being a Jewish state right there. In other words, they want what they have wanted ever since 1948, which is they do not want Israel to be on that holy land. They want all of it. And I compare it to the situation that we have where people are talking about the big lie, right? Or the big steal, depending on which side you're on, where we had an election in November of 2020, where every single rational person in the world, in the country, says that Joe Biden was legally elected president of the United States. The Republicans were not happy about it, but they certified the election in Georgia and Arizona and other states. So what seems to be happening is very analogous to what happened in 1948. If we go all the way back to that, so the people who are very pro-Palestinian but are also Democrats, I want you to understand that I believe this is a parallel situation. In 1948, the United Nations, with the urging of Eleanor Roosevelt, they partitioned that land and they gave part of it to the Jews and part of it to the Arabs, right? The Jews said, and there were Jewish people who said, no, this is not enough. We're being screwed. This is horrible. Let's fight. And then there were Israeli leaders who said, no, we're not going to fight. We're going to accept the determination of the United Nations, even though we're not happy about it, right? Just like a lot of Republicans in 2020 said, we're going to accept the results of the election that Joe Biden won, that Donald Trump lost. We're not happy about it, but we're going to abide by the rule of law, right? So it's now been since 1948, which is what, 52, 73 years, where the Palestinian people are acting like Republicans, the Trump Republicans, saying, no, we don't accept it, we don't accept it, we don't accept it. And in politics, as you know, Yarden, compromise is inevitable. You almost never get everything you want. And so the bottom line here is I am scared and very concerned by the current movement within the right wing in Israel to not have a two-state solution, to move beyond that and to have a one-state solution, which means that Israel will be destined to be seen as South Africa and to be this horrible country where there's two separate populations. There's the Jews and there's the Arabs, and they're always going to be looking like they are practicing a Jewish form of apartheid. Or we have a full democracy where all of the Palestinians in this one giant state are given equal voting rights, and there will be no Jewish leadership. There will be no Jewish country in a very short period of time. John Kerry, former Secretary of State, said Israel has a choice. right? You're either going to have a two-state solution, right? Or you're going to, in fact, lose your status as a Jewish state if you want to be a democracy. So I'd like your thoughts on that, because I think what we need to do with this conflict is not go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I think we need to fucking move forward and have the world come together to get a separate Palestinian sovereign state, fund the heck out of it. There's between 3 and 4 million people. It's not that big a country, right? And the United States would contribute, Israel would contribute, the EU would contribute, the Arab countries surrounding Palestine would contribute. Within 5 to 10 years, that country could be the Switzerland of the Middle East. And I just don't know why it's not happening. And I think that should be our total focus. Let us create an independent Palestinian state. I'd like to know both your thoughts on it. And then we're going to take a break. And then I'll come back and I'm going to talk about the end of HR 1, the For the People Act. It is dead, dead, dead. And I want to talk about what we can do about that. So I know that's national politics. We've got quite an interesting thing where, like Israel, things are so evenly split. We have a 50-50 Senate. And one of the senators just said that he was not going to support the most important I believe voting rights and democracy legislation our country has seen in 100 years. Anyway, Ron, Yarden, you want to respond to my monologue?
Yeah, Richard, again, if it was that simple, it would have been done long ago. I think that unfortunately, and you will have some Palestinian friends coming over, as you say, in one of your next shows. Please ask them, and I would be willing to participate as a listener if I have the opportunity. Ask them if the current state of affairs is one that is giving Yarden and myself and the other Israelis confidence that when the Palestinians, and the test case, of course, is Gaza, receive a beautiful piece of land with beaches and agriculture and whatever, lot of potential, receive funds to build an airport, a seaport, etc., etc. And look what happened after 15 years of this experiment. I am not sure that this is something that I want to see replicated. And unfortunately.
So hold on, Ron, let me clarify what you're saying. So you're saying that even if we did what I suggested, right, and the world came together and we created a Palestinian state, you think those resources that the world would be giving to that new Palestinian state would be squandered and used to create, to buy more rockets to threaten you and Yarden and the rest of the Israeli population?
Unfortunately, we have, when you make an experiment and you go into the lab and you see the results, I think that unfortunately, as I see it, and with my own eyes, it didn't work. And now replicating this experiment closer to where I live, it's about 2 miles away, bringing in people with, as you said, with that economic aid, grants, etc., and doing this experiment again is not something that I would support until I get some confidence that this is not going to happen a second time.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, right? Yarden, you want to respond to my monologue?
Yes.
And then I want to wish you guys good evening, because it's quite late in Israel now.
Thank you. I'll go back to your questions about the Palestinians who might be evacuated from their homes in East Jerusalem, because I think that's an important point that somehow connects to your monologue. So I have a great deal of empathy for them. I believe that no person should be evicted from their home the same way my grandmother shouldn't have been evicted from Mosul, or my other grandmother should have been evicted from Rabat in Morocco, or my grandfather was evicted from Aleppo the moment that the state of Israel was established. And so there was such great animosity from the moment that there was a Zionist entity here in the state of Israel. And you know what? I'll be honest. There was animosity between Arabs and Jews long before. Anyone who wishes to call these tensions, no, it's not, anti-Jewish, it's anti-Israeli, it's anti-Netanyahu, it's anti-right-wing government, it's anti-whatever. These are just new names for a rift that's been, centuries, millennial in the making. And when we came here, after being driven away from every piece of land on earth, be it in the West, be it in the East, we tried living side by side with the Arab population, to no avail. From the pogroms to the independence war, which was forced upon us because we didn't wish for a war. We just, after the partition, which you have mentioned, which is, established by the international community as the rightful solution to the troubles of, the Jewish people and the Palestinian people here. The country was divided, and this has been going on since then till now, from the establishment of the state. And I think that the last few days where you are seeing Arab people or Israeli citizens searching for Jewish businesses, Jewish homes, Jewish people to lynch, people that they coexisted with, quote unquote, until a week ago, and that they are now looking to drive away from their home, their only home, yet again, their only home on this planet, is testament to the fact that it's not going to be possible and so very easy to make this, a nation for all its citizens. Nor will it be acceptable for us to be the sovereigns of a population that does not wish to coexist with us. They simply do not wish it. So I think that.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. Sorry, we got a little delay. I think that's the bottom line. Yasser Arafat in 2000, when Bill Clinton and Ehud Barak were doing everything they could to create a compromise that would work, he just, my understanding, gets on an airplane and flies back without a counteroffer. So they're not interested, or there is a faction within the Palestinian leadership and people that is not interested. And I think it goes back to extremism is a problem. It's a problem in my country. It's a problem in your country, on both sides. It's a problem with the Palestinians. As I said, we're not going to solve this in this hour. I would love to continue the conversation. I've got to move on. We've got to take a commercial break. And thank you for sharing your perspectives. I hope you and your son are safe, Yarden. I hope you and your family, and especially your son who's in the Army right now, Ron, is safe. And I just hope we can get our shit together on this issue and move forward and not allow extremists to co-opt what the vast majority of Israelis want, what the vast majority of Palestinians want, and what the vast majority of Jews and non-Jews around the world want. Anyway, Toda Rabbah, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again.